if you could explain what is the crack?
The crack, I suppose, just a load of fun, like load of mess and kind of that sort of thing. Like that's what the crack would be like.
How can I have the crack? What's the crack?
What is the crack? You are the crack.
Welcome to episode 3 of Audio Crack. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the first 2 episodes. I know the second episode was a little wacky. We had George Santos on. I know a lot of you guys think I was a little too soft on him. Look, go back to the macrodosing interview I did with him where I got him basically to admit to a Ponzi scheme. So allegedly, just go back. I gave him a hard time enough there. I was thankful he came on. We're just trying to get weird, wacky guests, interesting guests. And if you're here, you're probably also aware that I have just announced that I am, I don't like the word dropping out, but basically stopping my fight in court, suspending my run for Congress. And, we're going to stop fighting in court. So our guest today is the man behind the curtain of my congressional run, Zach Werrell. Lawyer, political strategist, occasional author. He's gotten 4 members elected to Congress. He's been in 25 or more races total. But my favorite title of his is the Rhino Hunter. Zach, love to have you on.
Thanks for having me. Let's hunt some big game. Piedmont Strategic Services is my consulting gig, but I'm also an attorney. I have Werrell Law, which I'm starting up. I practice in Houston. But before I went to law school, I did campaigns all the time and got burned out.
I mean, it's crazy. You have a lot of war stories that I can't wait to get into. But first off, it's hard coming from me for people to hear like exactly how crazy what this campaign went through and what it dealt with, the adversity, basically, whatever people say, you can say that the establishment stopped me. And I sound like someone that I also didn't believe before I ran, that there is an actual machine that will prevent outsiders from getting into politics. It is palpable, it is physical, and I just need someone with more nuance. You are very well-informed, an expert in your field. And I just want to talk to you first. What exactly happened with my campaign that was out of the ordinary? What did you not expect to happen that happened? And how did we get to this point where basically, even though we ran an amazing, went way better than anyone could have thought campaign, we still were not able to get on the ballot?
Yeah, so I think it might be helpful to establish some of my bona fides first, so it's not just some random dude you found on Twitter who has a suit, right? Yeah. So, I've been doing campaigns since 2013. The biggest one that everybody's heard about is the Dave Bratt victory over Eric Cantor, where we defeated the sitting House Majority Leader, the only time it's ever been done in a primary in the country. I subsequently got 3 more members of Congress elected, and I run Senate races and everything down to dog catcher. So, and now I'm an attorney. But with your campaign, what happened was New York. I'd never worked in New York. New York is one of the most corrupt states in the country in terms of the way that their laws work, the ballot access, and the ability to game the system. And so with your campaign, for example, in Maryland, you go down to the State Board of Elections, you pay $100, you're on the ballot. In Virginia, you submit 1,000 signatures, and the state party just checks them. There's no court, there's nothing. The state party just says, oh, you've got 1,000. In New York, they have extremely onerous laws. So everybody's registered by party. They have a very limited window in which to get signatures. And to boot, they just changed the district lines actually after the petition window opened. And so you decided to get into the race. It was a little late, but I saw the path to victory. And we immediately began executing. One of the things that hurt us, though, was I didn't know any signature people here in New York, so we had to just kind of trust people to do it, and one of our vendors came up short. If he had actually come through, we would have had much closer, if not over the valid number. And so with your campaign, we ran into the political machine of Long Island. I'd heard all these stories about how, the mobsters and Teamsters and all this sort of stuff in New York, but I didn't realize how that ethos and practice had permeated politically. And so aside from the onerous regulations that make it very hard to actually get on the ballot, the laws are created such that people with huge institutional backing are able to plow through the signatures you turn in a couple of days, and you only have a certain number of days, like 3 days to challenge it, and you only have 3 days to get the legal stuff done, and so it requires already being primed to do this. And there's an entire cottage industry in New York built around these ridiculous ballot access laws. So it's like, oh, I need to hire somebody to do petitions. Oh, well, guess what? There's a bunch of people whose only job it is to do petitions. Oh, there's a bunch of people whose only job it is to strike petitions, in the courts. There are people who cure the petitions. And so it's like there's this whole milieu of political and legal restrictions that can be weaponized. And so that's what happened with you. And so you picked a fight with the Nassau GOP, and they were able to mobilize the resources necessary to not just get you off the ballot, but get everybody else off the ballot. And so, yeah.
And I mean, the crazy thing is it's not really about even just the quality of the signatures. We went out and got as many signatures as we could. It was that not all the candidates were subjected to the same standards. So we had Mike Lipetri, who knows what his signatures look like. There's a chance that he didn't even review, like his signatures just could have been a pile of papers just with, actual fraud going on. It's just no one checked them because everyone else got hit by these private individuals who were using the same law firm, same notary. It was I didn't realize it was going to be that overt that the rest of the field was going to get killed just because they weren't the established candidate.
Yeah, so the way it worked out is they challenged everybody but you, and Mike Lipetri, they've been planning this for a long time, and so you jumping in the race was a big problem. Now people are like, why didn't you challenge Lipetri's signatures back? We didn't want to draw attention to ours because we knew we were kind of pushing it because of the short turnaround, the number that we had, and so our strategy was don't hit them with a challenge and let's try to ride it out. Now, I naively thought that people would be interested in having actual competitive elections because, even Fidel Castro had other people on the ballot in Cuba,
Well, also there's the element that there would be a chance for new Republicans to get into the Republican Party of Nassau County. Like it would increase their size and get in a youth vote, hypothetically. Just, if you're an outsider looking at a candidate covering Barstool Sports, we have a large young audience. We have a large presence on social media, which is skewed to younger people. The fact that they didn't even want to open up to let's get more people registered Republicans in this district so that might help all sorts of candidates in the general election in this November in national races. But no, that wasn't at all what they wanted.
No, their philosophy is keep it small, keep it all. So they don't want a lot of candidates. They want to handpick their successors so that they can control that. They don't want a lot of new people voting because that means that their math gets all messed up and they have to find new ways to disenfranchise people. And so they come down with the full force of law. And yeah, technically everything they did was legal, but the rules are designed to be weaponized against outsider candidates like yourself. And that's why I kind of dropped everything I was doing to help you out on this race, because I saw the potential. Getting the word out that the average person who knows that everything is screwed up, they actually can do something about it. Now, are they going to be elected to Congress, the random? No, not likely. There's only 435 of them. But collectively, getting all these new people involved, these new people energized would totally transform the party. But obviously, the powers that be have a different plan. Keep it small, keep it all.
Now, going back to your time running campaigns for other candidates before you went to law school, that was your main priority. That was your main career. You got the name Rhino Hunter. And, getting into the political sphere, you hear this term rhino being in the race. Everyone's calling out rhinos. There's MAGA and there's rhinos. And then there's all sorts of other factions in the Republican Party. Rhino meaning Republican in name only, going after individuals who don't exactly vote the way their party likes. They don't vote the way their constituents like. And you became the Rhino Hunter. And I also, at a time, was a Rhino Hunter myself. Different type of Rhino Hunter. The Kenyan white rhinos was an opponent of mine.
Aren't they extinct now?
In the wild, I think there's only a couple, but they were a little more successful in their football team when they're the mascot.
Your footprint is on ecological history then.
Yes.
to a small degree.
No, well, yeah, Kenyan White Rhinos. It was the name of the Kenyan football team that I played.
Oh, I thought you were talking about shooting actual
No,
rhinoceroses.
I didn't actually shoot any rhinos. Let's just get that on the record. I did not shoot any rhinos. I did not harvest any ivory. Yeah, rhinos, elephants. You know, they've had a bad shake. They've got enough targets on their back with big game hunting. But you were a rhino hunter, RINO, Republican name only, and you got that moniker from a very young age. How old were you during that campaign?
So I was 23. So
You were younger than me.
the second job I ever had out of college. I was probably the reason I got the job working for Dave Bratt was because I was the only political operative in Virginia who was dumb enough to take on the most powerful guy in the country in our party.
Wow.
And, you know, a lot of things had to line up. So I'm not like some genius sitting behind a screen and doing a bunch of calculations or something. But what it was the American people are sick of the established political class getting together with their buddies from across the aisle to screw all of us. And that's what they do. The only time Republicans and Democrats get along is when it's to screw the normal person. And so we had an opportunity to take the guy out, and with his $12 million or so and our $250,000, we beat him by 11 points.
Wow.
That was wild.
I mean, when that was happening, when you in what year was this?
2014.
So this was before the Trump election. This was before the establishment really felt vulnerable in a way, and you kind of surprised them, and it kind of may have been the first domino to fall of a lot of elections that occurred since. With that, like, what was the shock from both your campaign, the crew that you were with, like, because you were at the epicenter of it, like, that must have been just sort of the first taste the establishment got of, like, one of their primo candidates getting knocked off and the lack of control that they might have now in this new age. What was going through your head? What were you hearing from people? I mean, you were 23 years old. That had to be, like, I'm so different now at 25 than I was at 23. Like, you're kind of just a kid at that point, and you're going against this huge system that's been around for hundreds of years, and, you know, you just knocked out Goliath. What happened?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's set the stage here. So 2014 was kind of the end of the Tea Party wave. So in like 2010 was the first real Tea Party. It was like kind of a very emotional and visceral reaction to the Obama administration. And so 2010, 2012, and then 2014 was kind of the Tea Party era. And so 2014 was kind of the last gasp of the Tea Party, because 2016, here comes Trump. And so in a lot of ways, I was kind of riding the front edge of this wave that has become where we're at politically now on our side of the aisle. To talk about the experience a little bit, it's like I didn't know anything. I read a bunch of books about how to run campaigns. I pretty quickly, though, I'll tell you, no, there was a poll that I saw from the previous election cycle. In Virginia, we don't have party registration. So that means anyone can vote, which is different than a lot of states. I saw a poll from the previous election that showed that Eric Cantor was viewed positively only by 20% of the voters in the district, but negatively by 40%. Now, in a majority Republican district, should be 50% minimum Republicans, he has 20% positives. So I saw that the field was fertile for tilling. And Dave was a great candidate. He was a college professor. He wore a suit. He wasn't kind of like a crazy person or anything. He was dignified, bona fide, and could speak well. And, you know, it was kind of just, screw it, let's do it. Let's take this guy on. I don't care. I didn't really have a career to think about or anything. It was my second job ever. And I didn't know what I was doing. And so we just went all out on the guy. And we found, through guessing and testing, we found a message that worked. And it wasn't, you know, it was kind of laden with the issues. The issues were somewhat involved, but the thesis of it was this guy's corrupt, this guy's making money off his corruption, and he's screwing you. And we were able to harness that anger, and they had a poll that came out like a week before that showed Cantor up 36%. We won by 11.
Wow. Now, what was your first job? This was your second job.
My first job was for Delegate Mark Berg. Well, he hadn't been elected yet, but he just won a big primary upset, actually. And I was looking for work out of college. I studied economics and nobody wanted to hire me for that. So I just networked with some people, and they said, hey, there's a guy who needs a campaign manager up in Winchester, Virginia. Drove up there, did it, didn't really learn anything. We hardly had an opponent. He was an independent and had no money, so we stomped him. And the people involved with that said, hey, we got another guy for you. Do you want to do this race? And I said, hell yeah. I was in my parents' basement, I remember.
Like Mike Lipetri.
Yeah, exactly. Like, not all things that are cooked up in your mom's basement are bad. This was one of the good ones. And I just took the bull by the horns, and we had a very small staff. By the end, there were only 2 paid staffers on the race, me and my deputy campaign manager. And we were laser focused on winning. We did not think about what would happen if we actually did it. So we were like the dog that caught the car bumper, And I got my ass handed to me, like just media-wise. I didn't know what to do. We had 50 television cameras in trucks outside of our little strip mall office. You had to like go in the back door. We had to shut the blinds. It was just crazy.
Wow. Now, looking back and getting back to Mike Lipetri bit, we did try to get his signatures off because of his address.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So with that, we were, they challenged us, and it's like we have to find a way to strike back, try to fight back. We didn't have the resources necessary to pour through all the signatures to try to knock him off that way. And I found in some of the public records that his address didn't match what he was putting on there. There are places where his address has an apartment at his mom's house. 5A, I think, is the apartment. So it's like, well, there's 2 floors and a garage. So it's like, where's apartment 5A?
Where's apartment 1?
Right.
2, 3.
And so we launched a court challenge by you. You tried to sue him kind of for the same thing, but instead of knocking off individual signatures, it was knock them all out at once because he used an address that wasn't valid.
And the craziest thing is we brought this, and it's a very valid argument. If you're gonna argue that this signature is not valid because the signature and name are registered to another address in the district that may not be their residence, that don't match up, and this is how they were trying to disqualify all the signatures, very arbitrary stuff, illegible address, illegible signature. If that was like the importance of an address can disqualify one signature, the importance of your stated residence where you're registered and you claim you live, not just registered to vote, is not what it is on all of your petitions. That should be enough grounds to throw everything out. And because of that, when we went to serve Mike Lipetri, he was nowhere to be found. So, let's say I was not trying to play fair and not trying to, do the just thing. Would I have been able to stay on the ballot if I just left the country during the whole time they were trying to serve me? Because basically our case got dismissed within the first 5 minutes because we were not able to personally serve Mike Lipetri. And basically, how much time did we have?
So they signed the order at like 4:37 p.m. and you had until midnight to get overnight mail, to personally serve the guy with the lawsuit, to FedEx all this stuff. And so it was, again, this is the corruption. It's like if you have 7 hours to personally serve someone. Now, I don't know. I mean, obviously, you've been served at least once in your life.
Right. Yeah, now.
So it's like you have to go to the house. You have to get them while they're there. And if the dude doesn't actually live with his mom in the basement, it's kind of hard to personally serve him at the address that he has on his signature sheets.
Right. And we looked for him everywhere. We could not find, but it was because, and as George Santos, this was not on the record. It was on the record in the podcast last time, but George Santos said that he allegedly lives with a group of roommates in a totally different address, which is expected of a 33-year-old man to not be still living with your parents. I mean, if you do, I ran a whole campaign about it.
Dudes can't buy houses. Yeah. It's not your fault, Mike. But
yeah. That was ridiculous. But even, the fact that our democracy's gone to the point where they are trying to make sure that the people's vote is not actually heard and that these party leaders don't actually want their constituents to have a say in who they put up, that's, I think, a real issue. And even though this campaign for 2024, the 2020, yeah, the campaign's in 2024, has been suspended. I hope that the ideas of what we went up against and what we saw sort of echoes throughout the country, that even though this is a magnified glass on one district in New York, one congressional district, this is a problem that's occurring in almost every district around the country. And we need to do something about it as a country, and hopefully people just become a little more politically aware to something like this, so that we can stop that, and then that will stop the trickle down trickle up to higher levels of government, that it is a problem. There is a stifling of the people's actual rights to vote, the people's right to expressing their viewpoints, and it's kind of what we're seeing around the country, blue or red or anything. That is what's going on. There's an actual stifling of the people's voice.
Yeah, so first, when you called me, I was at the Houston Rodeo.
Yeah, that was how we got together. Now, this Zach's the man behind the curtain. Like with all the political stuff, it's impossible to run a campaign by yourself, as I found out. And once I filed, I realized, like, oh my God, I just filed. It's way easier than you think to file to get in the running for Congress. With that, you have to submit a ton of paperwork. The FEC sends stuff to your house immediately, looking for your financial records, looking for everything. It's a pretty wild situation to be in, and you kind of realize, hey, I need help. So in that moment, through a mutual friend, he's fine with us saying.
Yeah, Elliot Harding. He does more than dog law.
Yes.
He's a lawyer, but he does more than dog law. He asked me to say that.
Okay. He does dog law?
Yeah, he saves vicious, violent dogs from being executed.
Oh, my God. I didn't actually know that. That is awesome. We need to call Elliot. He is saving dogs from being, like...
Yeah, so in Virginia, basically, after you bite the second child, like, they have to put the dog down. But Elliot's an expert at, like, second, third, fourth, fifth bites.
That is crazy.
No, I'm kidding. He does more than that. But yeah, so
yeah, how many cases did he do like that?
I don't know. You will have to ask him.
Oh my God. What constitutes a child? I mean,
at common law or statutorily?
Well, when a dog bites, like if a dog bites a high school kid who's like trying to spray paint your garage, like, is that?
No, you're trespassing at that point.
Okay, cool. I should keep that in mind. My dog's not vicious, but people think he's a 120-pound American bulldog. Like, everyone's like, oh,
it's always good to have a good lawyer in your corner.
Yeah, so I will call my lawyer for that dog. I will call Elliot if that dog.
But no, so Elliot hooked us up, and he was like, hey, you need to talk to this guy right now. And I was pre-gaming. Well, I was going hard because it was a Nickelback concert. And I stepped out to talk to William. And even though, I wasn't necessarily completely clear-headed at the moment, I saw immediately the potential in your candidacy, because your ability to talk to people who just tune this crap out because they know it's broken, they know that the system is rigged against them, and that's what I saw in your race, is the ability to shine a light on all of this.
I mean, it was crazy. One of the reasons why I wanted to run, I've stated, public service has always been an important thing to me, but I also wanted to learn how bad it really was. And if anything, and we were discussing, now that we've been boxed out of the Republican candidacy, we thought about a independent run. But the thing is, running as an independent, because of this system that is so obstructive and because of the establishment at work, it's almost impossible. I mean, RFK Jr. is doing it right now for the presidency, but he's almost being used as a tool to make sure that another candidate doesn't win right now.
Well, in George Washington's farewell address, if I'm not mistaken, he said something to the effect of having to prevent factionalism, which is old-timey word for political parties. And basically, by about 18, I'd say Andrew Jackson was really the first guy to get like a political party movement started, kind of in broad strokes. Since then, the political parties have weaseled their way in, and they've established themselves, entrenched themselves as kind of the de facto leaders of this. Like in most races around the country, if you win the party nomination, you're going to win the seat because the Democrats aren't competitive or the Republicans aren't competitive.
And what one of the things that you noticed immediately when you started working in New York State when it came to the two-party system compared to other states?
I'd say that the depths at which they operate and are able to manipulate things is unparalleled in New York compared to anywhere else I've worked. The political parties are empowered by law with a tremendous amount of power and a tremendous ability to corrupt the process. And so, you mentioned American democracy. It's like, I hate to break it to you, we haven't had a real democracy in a long time. This is an oligopoly. This is it's hard to say aristocratic, but it's like we're run by big corporations who control the big political parties, and we're all just puppets on strings for them.
Yeah. I mean, it's disheartening, and, I don't want to become pessimistic because I do see a path forward. I do see, like, for example, in 2 years, I'm running for Congress again. In 2 years. I'm just going to say it. Yeah. You're down?
All right, Dan.
Are you down?
Hell yeah.
Okay, we're doing it again, dude.
So you mean we have 2 years instead of 2 weeks to figure out how to get you elected?
Yes,
okay,
I'm sorry.
perfect.
I'm sorry. Last time I called you a little late. If we had one more week.
One more week, you'd be on the ballot.
Yeah.
A whole month, it'd be no problem.
I mean, we're running it back. We're running it back. It's going to be fun. 100% full. Like, Tom Suozzi's going to win the election again because Mike Lipetri just ran as a sacrificial lamb so that they can give Democrats the seat so that the Democrats don't funnel more funding to other races in the state. It's a whole thing. But, New York State only has 35% of Republican primaries that are contested.
Yeah, so you put it out on your blog, but I kind of ran the numbers. Yeah. And so New York's laws are extraordinary outliers if you exclude the rest of New England. Basically, everywhere in the country, the vast majority of primary elections are contested. There's usually more than one Republican running to be the Republican in the general. And so when I ran the numbers, at least for the Republicans, New York has about 31% of their primaries are contested. In Texas, it's like 76%. Illinois, it's like 69%. Nice. Texas, Florida's up in the 80s, I think.
Cali's 69.
Cali's 69 too. Imagine that.
Nice.
And so, New York's numbers at 30%. I mean, it's significantly lower than the rest of the country, and that's by design.
And it's crazy because hearing when Dave Portnoy talked about his signatures for his mayoral run of Boston not going through, that was the state. That was the state, and I think local authorities. That was the government who tossed his signatures. We got tossed by two random unaffiliated individuals.
Unaffiliated.
Yeah, quote unquote.
So the people who did this, just to give you an idea of the logistics, to review the signature, you have to try to decipher the handwriting, then you have to match the handwriting to a voter file, and you have to do this for 2,000 or 3,000 signatures. And believe me, it takes more than a second or two to do that process. And so they had hundreds of man-hours to throw at this, ready to go, the moment that you filed your signatures. And I don't remember precisely what your question was leading into that, but basically, it's
different than
right. So
everyone's like, Dave warned you, but I was like, no, we prepared for the government. We met all the government regulations.
Right. What's different here was the state of New York empowers random people, again in air quotes, random people to stick their nose in and disqualify candidates. And so they can, these two random unaffiliated individuals, they both submitted identical challenge sheets, challenged the exact same signatures for the exact same reason. They had the exact same notary sign their notarized statements, written identically with blanks for their names and address. And so it's very obvious that the party put their thumb on the scale here. And instead of having an election, they wanted a selection.
Yeah.
And so, this is a problem everywhere, but I found that New York is uniquely afflicted by this. I was prepared for chicanery and BS, but the extent to which they're willing to do this and kind of the shameless way that they do it without even like, an ounce of regret or remorse or thought was truly mind-boggling. They're willing to throw away the potential of having somebody who can bring in, not just locally for the local elections, but turn on and energize a whole group of people that right now don't vote very frequently. Young people generally don't vote very high, and there's somebody here who can energize them and totally change the math of that district. And instead, they wanted to get their, mama's boy, the meatloaf, as the Republican nominee to try to turn a seat. And this seat is very winnable, too, and that's why I pushed you to go to the 3rd district, because right now I'd say that it's about a 4,000 vote race. Someone like you, that math totally changes. And instead they'd rather just keep it small, keep it all. They know they can control Mike because his whole thing is about, self-licking ice cream cone.
I mean, I feel bad for Mike Lipetri. I feel really bad for Mike Lipetri because basically he's the first, he was taking advantage of the system because he thought it was the right thing to do. And he was like, oh, well, and it was, he's now going to the general election. But he basically, didn't realize that he'd ever become the target of all this stuff. I mean, we kind of dragged him on the internet. Sorry, Mike.
I've never been in charge of like a mob before. And like, having you, hey, why don't you tell him, like, go post on that? And then just to see the deluge of hate, it was like, it was feeding into some dark part of my ego that I don't interact with very much, but it's like, this is kind of cool. And so, no, we totally killed him.
I mean, it's Mike, if we just gone in a primary and you won fair and square, I would have just backed you and been like, yeah, better man wins. Go get him. But, now he's just been tarnished. And even, George Santos was saying, we had to cut some stuff that George Santos was saying about him on the podcast because, honestly, that's a little too far. Like, I don't know if that's true or not. George Santos doesn't have the best record, so I was just like, I'm not going to put that out there. We'll leave it at the address.
Grain of salt. We'll look into it. Yeah.
I mean, he had some very interesting stuff to say about the TikTok ban offline, though, because was privy to documents, to information, UFOs that we didn't know, that the public does not know, and we had a little private conversation offline. That was mind blowing.
So, I know that you're kind of, and you and all of this here where we're at is kind of predicated on social media and the internet, but that stuff, if it's free, then you're for sale. And so, to think that, the powers that be that control every aspect of the rest of our lives aren't utilizing and weaponizing social media to manipulate people is naive. And to think that our international enemies like China aren't doing the same is another level of naivete. Yeah. And so, I don't TikTok. I had a face or a MySpace. I was one of those first wave social media people. I had a Facebook probably in 2007. I nuked it all when I went to law school, but now I'm back on. But everything that nothing's by accident. Yeah. And to think that they're not putting their thumb on the scale on the algorithms and all that stuff too.
The crazy thing is a lot of these social medias, like, the social network, Mark Zuckerberg, the reason why Facebook became so big was because Peter Thiel and Palantir founder saw that, hey, we could get huge government contracts by using this app that isn't really profitable besides the, ad space, whatnot. But like, this is a multi-billion-dollar company because we're going to get defense force contractor type money from the government to collect the data of all these people to then use, after the Patriot Act got passed. If you line up the rise of social media with the rise of information acts, it's right next to each other. So, you were commenting you didn't even have a smartphone until you were a senior in high school?
No, college. Yeah.
What year was that?
1926.
No. That's the date of your car.
1924 Model T. Yeah. No.
That's wild. This guy has bought a 1924 Model T.
23, excuse me, 1923.
Sorry. So over 100 years old.
101 years old. And so it's like I've owned Tesla stock since like 2014, but I drive a 1924 23 Model T because it's simple, it works, and there's no way they're like cutting my engine off or anything like that. And let me just say this, I love my life. I have no intention of like hurting myself, but let me tell you, if you don't think that the defense industry is deep inside of all these social media sites and utilizing it and mining the data, you're just wrong.
I mean, remember that guy who went after General Crystal, the Rolling Stone article guy? And
no, tell me more.
Have you seen the general, the one with Brad Pitt? Brad Pitt was playing General McKinney.
Oh, I don't watch. That's mind control too, dude. I haven't watched a movie that was produced after 1976. I'm kidding. No,
the War Machine.
The War Machine.
Brad Pitt, War Machine. Yeah, and he basically plays General McChrystal, and that was based off a Rolling Stone article where this guy was basically, they showed how ridiculous he was. And ridiculous in that, like, I think he went, like, when he got on leave and was in Germany, he just went boozing, and he was like, he hated Obama, but like he knew Obama was funding everything. And basically, because this guy put such a spotlight on this general and ruined, basically put a huge, black eye on the campaign in Afghanistan, his car accelerated to 140 miles per hour and crashed straight into a tree.
Right. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I am a coincidence denier. Okay. And, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe a car goes 140 miles an hour by itself. Sure. And maybe just everybody who's blowing the whistle on Boeing just catches some random unidentified virus and dies.
Well, by the way, we're going to get into that with Dante next episode. I don't know what the release schedule is going to be for this podcast. I'm going to get out as much as I can. I'm trying to put together get a good body of work out there as fast as I can because, people are going to find the George Santos interview later and go back and listen to it and be like, holy shit. And like, we're just getting a body of work out there. So this interview might be airing on Tuesday. I might be announcing everything Tuesday. Dante will hopefully be on Wednesday. And then we might throw out something on Friday. So 4 podcasts in a week. We'll see how it goes.
Hell yeah.
I mean, all I can do is shoot, see what sticks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to get into all that, so I founded the University of Texas School of Law Flat Earth and Alchemitic Sciences Club and the Sasquatch Society. Yeah.
Wait, you did?
Yeah.
Wait, we've never spoken about this? What the fuck? You're a flat earther, or are you just a...
Look, I just was in an airplane last night, dude. You ever looked out of an airplane window?
Dude, come on. Come on, dude. You were just in it for the troll, though, right?
I don't know.
You haven't been to Antarctica?
No. I'm not allowed, dude. Are you allowed to Antarctica? What are they hiding?
We interviewed one dude who ran across Antarctica. And I was like...
Allegedly.
I know. I think he ran across something. But I was like, talking to him. I was like, yo, dude, like... I'm like, you're a linchpin to... You disprove flat earthers. You're like the one person who has confirmation bias that the earth is not flat. Like the one person in the world who like literally was like, I ran, I tracked it, and I got to the other side. And he was a little weird. He got a little weirded out by that question. And that's what got me weirded out. Because I was like, wait a second, dude, just joke about it. Like, why are you being like, well, yeah, I mean, I followed the thing and
you wonder,
flat earthers are coming after me and think that I'm in on it. And I'm like one of the guys, but that's not true. And I was like, wait a second. And then this guy, I'd love to have him on the podcast. I want to have him back. He was a macrodosing guest, but I'd love to talk to him again. If you want to be a guest, hit me up. I'd love to hear from anybody interesting, or doesn't even have to be interesting. I think CPAs are interesting because they know ins and outs of the tax code. I could save you a lot of money.
You know what the number one industry that lobbies against making our taxes simple enough for an average person to do?
CPAs. Yeah.
And tax attorneys.
Yeah.
It's a self-licking ice cream cone.
Yeah.
But anyway, do I think the earth is flat? I don't know. It's probably round, okay? But it's like, I don't know.
Dude, I think there's something in Antarctica.
Well, so the weird thing is, and I could be wrong on this, my understanding is that, Skellington, one of the first explorers that... Shackleton, who went through, some of his diaries talk about meadows on Antarctica, and it's like, that kind of doesn't match what we observe now. Yeah. But it's like, who knows? I mean, we've only have recordings of like temperature data and everything for like 100 years. Like, who knows how fast all this stuff changes? Who knows what's
Dude,
probably just ice, but
yeah, but Iceland, for example, Iceland actually used to be, it's all covered in ice now. I was there, before my campaign kicked off. And I still got to edit the video because it's so beautiful. But Iceland was covered, was actually quite moderate temperature, like back in before the 1300s. And then the 1300s happened, and now it became way more covered in ice. So the glaciers are receding there. And I was talking to the guys because I was there, talking to the guide, being like, okay, like they're going 100 feet back every year. And they're like, yeah, it's, it's melting at a crazy rate. And then they started talking about how all this area that was covered in glacier was once farmland and meadows, and, the origins of like Icelandic ponies. Like it was a much more fertile farming and herding island. Like that's why the sheep, they have much lower sheep herds than they were before, but sheep herding was one of the largest things there. And I was like, well, wait, what happened in 1300? Like there was a mini ice age. The ice came back tenfold. And I'm like, wait a second. And they think that was caused by volcanoes. So there's so many like different variables to what's happening there. So like, was it Antarctica? Like absolutely could have had meadows when Shackleton was there. Like we
Shackleford.
No, it's Shackleton.
Is it Shackleton
It's
or Shackleton? I could be wrong. But you're not wrong. So
Ernest Shackleton, Irish.
Shackleton.
Yeah.
And so the thing about so last night as I'm taking a video of the very round Earth out the window of the airplane, I put it on time lapse, and I'm watching it real time, and recording, and then I look at it, and your perception of everything that's going on is very different when the time frame is compressed, right? And so it's like you can see kind of like it looks way more like watery and water-like up there than it does when you're just driving through it at normal speed. And so all of this is to say, like, we're observing all of this stuff with a certain time scale, and it's like, who knows how different it looks depending on whether you zoom super tight and expand the timeline, or if you zoom super out and compress the timeline. And so it's like, I think that humans vastly overestimate the amount of stuff that we actually understand.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what's in Antarctica. It's the last continent I haven't been to. So I want to get there.
Well, one of two things is true about Antarctica. Either it's at the bottom of the globe covered in ice, or it's the wall that keeps the water in.
I don't think there's a wall. I think there could be. I don't think the Earth is flat. It's definitely a sphere. Are you like actually a flat earther?
No,
okay,
but
okay,
I find
good.
it's like sometimes.
I was just like, wait a second, this guy just ran my.
Yeah, good job, Billy. No, for me, it's like I question everything though.
Yeah,
it's like I don't have like a belief system built around the shape of the Earth. It's probably almost certainly round. I never observed it, but I got to trust other people who've done all the observations and all that sort of stuff. But like, I don't truly know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy. But I also wanted to get into your time. And now this is where the hard questions. This knockout question was brought to you by This Could Be You sponsoring this podcast. Please reach out. We would love to get sponsors. It would be huge. What were you doing in Charlottesville during the Charlottesville?
Okay, so I lived in Charlottesville.
Yeah.
So I did most of my political work in Central Virginia. And so, oh boy, I haven't told this story in a while. So long story short, I helped one of your future guests actually run for governor. Mm-hmm. And then he got out of that race and started like tracking all of like the super bad like white nationalist people.
Whoa.
And he started to like, these are the people, he found pictures of them in the woods with a burning swastika. Like he could identify a few of them.
Holy shit.
And one of those dudes started to try to like get involved in the local Republican Party. And so I was like, oh boy, this is bad. And so me and my buddies started like cyberbullying the shit out of him when he was trying to do this. And we managed to block him from members of his people elected to the local party. And so we're just trolling this guy, trying to make him go away. And he started, basically, what was going on is they were taking down the statues in Charlottesville of the Confederate generals. And so a lot of local people were upset about it. And so he started advertising locally that he's going to do this rally to save the statues. But then he was using it to network with all 56 of the other, neo-Nazis in the country.
Holy shit.
To get them together. And so we saw this bad thing coming. And so anyway, my buddy Richard and I, so I was Tom Garrett. I was one of his top political guys. He was in Congress at the time, and he's like, Zach, no matter what happens, don't go to Charlottesville today. So we made signs and planned on driving to the rally to mess with people. And so our sign said, the only thing worse than a damn Yankee is a damn Nazi. And so we get in my little Ford Ranger, and we turned up the United States military band version of Dixie as loud as it could go to get their attention. And we drive up, and they see us, they hear Dixie, and they start going, yay. And then Richard leans out holding the sign, and they mobbed us. And so I drive a manual Ranger, and one of the windows doesn't go up very fast. So like they mob us. I'm trying to get out of the parking lot. My window's going up this fast. So they're grabbing Richard and they're pulling him out the window and they're throwing shit at us. And it was like, oh boy. And we're driving home and we heard on the news that 2 people had died. And it's like, oh my God. And so, yeah, that was wild. It's like, why are people bringing baseball bats and homemade shields to political events? It was crazy. So yeah, I got attacked by Nazis at Charlottesville.
Wow. Damn.
I got some scars, dude.
You first got to fight the Nazis on American soil. Well, not first, but that's an insane story. So, I mean, hard-hitting questions. You avoided the knockout question. Little segment we're trying to figure out. But
my legal services are available for hire.
Do you want to sponsor the podcast? That'd be huge.
Well, we'll talk about it.
Okay, we'll talk about it. But yeah, I mean, so moving forward, how do you think, with your expertise in campaigning, in election, what do you see happening at the end of 2024 in this environment?
So I think I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a coincidence denier. 2020 was unique in a lot of ways. The biggest one is they changed all the rules of voting midstream, and that's part of the reason why certain states were flipped, just because they were the mail-in ballots and all that sort of stuff. So what I'm saying is, as of right now, 2024 seems a lot more stable than 2020. And all the indicators in 2020 were that Trump was going to be reelected. In fact, I mean, I was in law school at the time, so I wasn't super tightly focused on it. But I remember going to bed. I had my bellwether counties from around the country, and Trump was up 40, 50 points in all of them. And it's like, okay, all the indicators are that Trump's going to win. Go to bed, wake up, and, they found 200,000 votes or whatever in the middle of the night, and they're 97% for Joe Biden. All that. So it's like, I don't know what happened. The rules were changed. It's weird. Yeah. But this time, there shouldn't be anything that causes a large amount of instability in the rules. And so right now, it looks like we're going to have, I'd put money on Trump winning probably. We're kind of on a bad trajectory right now in this country.
Do you think RFK Jr. takes a bigger bite out of Biden's pie or Trump's pie?
So I think that Trump's big problem is going to be that he won't give up on the vaccine and Operation Warp Speed and all that sort of stuff. So he still touts it, and that's a lot of his supporters don't like that. So I can see that cutting into Trump. But the problem is we've also got Joe Biden. And so it's like the Kennedy name is still powerful. Believe it or not, there are a bunch of people who were alive in the 60s still around, and they vote. And so it all depends. The thing about presidential elections is that it's state by state. It's the Electoral College. And so does RFK Jr. pull kind of disaffected Democrats more in like Michigan than he pulls from kind of anti, big pharma people in some of the swing southern states? Like, it's hard to judge. It's really hard to judge. So,
I mean, where else have we? This is the first time actually Zach and I have met in person, and it's great to see him. I wanted to save a lot for the podcast. This podcast got off to a, back in high school, some of my best football games were after like crazy shit happened that day, and it's like the worst thing. Like I would get detention, or there was like it was like shit, and like. But we had a spill. We spilled some coffee before the thing.
Coffee, yeah.
We couldn't get the podcast room. This it's a Monday. I got fired a week ago.
No, it's
so we're rocking and hanging in there. It's great to have Zach here. We can technically expense the campaign for dinner, right?
let's talk to the campaign lawyer. You know, we'll make sure that everything's legal.
It's a very fine line, and like for example, if we were having a campaign meeting, like and we didn't expense things, that's also illegal.
It's So this is kind of the catch-22 that Trump's in with the Stormy Daniels stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, he paid her to not talk, and they're coming after him. They're saying that it's a campaign finance violation because he didn't report it as a campaign expenditure. But can you imagine if Donald Trump had put hush money to Stormy Daniels on his campaign expense? He'd be in trial for that too.
Yeah.
And so it's like these rules are stupid. It's so one state that's got it right is Virginia for the local elections. And so they have unlimited contributions, but you have to report everything. And so there aren't all these regulations. Like right now, somebody could give your campaign $3,300 for this cycle, but they could write a $330 million check for a super PAC, and nobody ever knows, right? And so it's like, you know, it's another example of these idiotic regulations that are corroding everything.
And
no, we did everything legal.
Yeah, that was super important. Like that was one of the things. I was like, everyone, you know, would think it was hilarious if I went to prison. Like, there's a lot of people who like the campaign because they think it's a bit, and they're like, oh man, if he goes to jail for this, that would be amazing content, hilarious. Like, yes, part of me does agree. My super funny content braids, like that would actually be funny if I went to prison with this. But like, we ran everything tight on the ship. I mean, now we have a campaign fund that's going to be in limbo, which means that we don't know exactly what we're going to do with the rest of the money. It's not that much. We had to spend a lot of money fighting in court, and we weren't going to go for an independent run. So now we basically have a fund that I could use to run in another electoral cycle. I can also donate the money, right, to a cause I see fit. So we're going to see what happens from there. How would you introduce your book and how?
So in law school, thinking that I was never going to do politics again in the middle of COVID, I did what any normal law school student would do, and that is write a book. And so I went through and I was thinking about all the little sayings and phrases and stuff that I had learned along the way that are useful in running a campaign. And so, you know, some simple one. I mean, I borrowed some from Napoleon's Maxims of War, or, you know, all these little turns of phrases. But, you know, one of the key things, you know, one of the first rules, and this is something now you've learned the hard way, which is campaigns take time. So that's the only thing you can't get more of. It's not about having a lot of money. It's about having enough money. And so it's like these things, you know, it's Werrell's Rules of Politics, or the difference between winning and losing and staying sane along the way. Atmosphere Press, buy it on Amazon. But basically, it's a collection of sayings and aphorisms that I picked up along the way that kind of go into how you win. And so it's not so much like a step-by-step guide of how to win an election, but it's how to think about elections. And so, you know, there's a variety of little rules and tricks, but you know, one of the key ones is if they can't be fired, they shouldn't be hired. And so that means, like, if the candidate's wife wants to be the press secretary, or, you know, your friend builds websites or whatever, it's like, yeah, we probably don't want to use them, because if I fire them, it's going to cause a lot of problems.
Jeez. And
so, you know, in the years since I'm doing politics again, because you know, I just can't shake the bug. I've found there are more ones, so there'll be a second edition, but it's like 120 rules of how to think about campaigns. Like the winning math is on the margins. Oh, here's one that I kept saying to you, which is think exponentially. That
was my favorite.
Not linearly. That one. Right, and so that rule is for the political science students in the audience. Exponential curves grow faster. Well, let me do this. Faster over time, whereas a linear curve just is a straight line. And so when you're trying to maximize your output on a campaign, sure, you can think, oh, let me call 5 of my friends to go collect signatures. But if you can find 5 people to find 5 people, you've then executed exponential thinking.
That one is actually stuck with me, and I'm trying to use that for this podcast. Like, for example, you know, I'm sort of kind of starting over content-wise, trying to get stuff going. Thinking exponentially instead of linearly has really helped me. Like, for example, shout out Nikki Quinn. He's in the booth right now. Instead of trying to learn bunch of skills that will take me time, that will sort of stop me from creating content and like be a big roadblock. Nikki Quinn stepped up. Nikki Quinn was helping with the campaign, and now he's also helping with the podcast, but he's not getting campaign funds anymore because that is just putting that out there. So he's down to help produce this podcast. And because of that, I've been able to get out more exponentially. Like instead of me learning to do it, having someone else do it, having other people, that is something that has really affected how I'm going to like do this. And basically I also have someone else who's managing like ads right now. He's going out looking for advertisers, so I can just focus on putting this together. Getting guests is really what I find to have the best exponential run for me. So, I mean, getting George Santos so quickly, I mean, you have to take that opportunity when he's there, because if you're like, oh, you know what, I don't want George Santos to be my first guest, then you're going to lose George Santos. Like, and then you have no first guest. So it is what it is. I mean, like with Zach, you being involved in the campaign, it would have never gotten to the point it was, of course. And like the thing is, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that you need a structure, you need an advisor in order to even get close. I mean, the thing is, people saw me on Fox News, people saw me doing media, but you could do all of that and still not get anywhere close to making the ballot, like, and actually getting the stuff together in order to run a valid campaign. And we didn't get into it, but what would your strategy have been for me once I got on the ballot, once we were running in a primary?
So, I mean, the way that I do it is like, at least for the primary, and this is true for the general, it's like I have a data modeling team figure out who are the people that are most likely to respond positively to the message, and you calibrate the message a little bit to make it bigger, smaller. But what I do is we need 15,000 voters to win. Find me the 15,000 voters that are most susceptible, and then you're able to micro-target them on digital. You can send them literal ads on their connected TV, YouTube, all that stuff, text messages, phone calls, and I hyper-focus on that group of voters that I know mathematically is a certain percent likelihood to vote for you as long as we talk to them. And then after you get that micro-targeted list, then you can worry about Fox News and all that sort of stuff. You had the platform you did, it was easy to get you onto those other things. But, basically you laser focus, what is the number necessary to win? That's the only thing that matters. It's a math game. And then you build out from there. And so, basically, I mean, you live through it. It's like, oh, you want to go? Okay, let's go. I'm hiring an attorney tomorrow. We're going to find the petition people tomorrow. We're going to talk to 6 of them, and we're going to get this thing rocking and rolling fast. Like, buckle up, Buttercup.
The speed in which it occurred, and honestly, the only reason we were having these conversations, and it was basically like, are you ready to get into this, to jump on this horse? Do I regret getting into politics? Honestly, at this point, no. It may have impacted other parts of my life, but I don't regret it because I was driving when it happened. And that exact same time, and Zach, I don't know if you remember this, but you're like, do you really want to do this? Because we can make this happen. And the speed in which it happened and how we were able to organize was insane. And it was a credit to your ability to organize and your tenets and your rules. And it was a whirlwind. But you said, do you want to do this right now? And I was like, dude, I don't know. Like, I don't need to do this. I don't kind of want to do this. It's one of these things where it's like waking up at 5 a.m. to work out. Like, you don't want to do it, but you kind of need to do it because it is something, there's a problem that needs to be fixed. And I just see a bald eagle just cross my windshield right after. And I'm just like, oh shit, I got to do this.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. You've invoked 2 rules there. Or 2 more rules. So one of them is don't run for office unless you want to win because you just might. Yeah. And I don't remember what speed kills and all that. But no, it's like if especially on the compressed time frame, it's time to rock and roll. And it's like the weirdest part is like, how do you think someone like George Santos was able to win? Yeah. Because he threw his hat in the ring. You can't do anything from the sidelines. And so, I was very encouraging of your decision, but it was also like, are you sure you want to be a member of Congress? Because this is a very real possibility here.
Yeah.
And so, and we just put together a plan as fast as we could and just started executing. And, when you're that close and you just fail there's a million things that could have been the thing. And so it's like there were so many things that we were just off on that if they had just broken our way a little bit more or we had more time, you'd be on the ballot right now.
And the craziest thing is if you Google New York's 3rd Congressional District, the map that they have is not the actual district. It is the wildest thing. So there are towns that aren't in the district. People don't even know what district they're currently in. And that was a huge problem with the campaign because there was a switch that occurred halfway, like a good amount of into the petitioning time. And it is, it's one of those things where if we had just lost, I would sort of slunk away, like if we didn't get it going. But we had everything in place. There was no predicting the crazy sort of legal and situation with the party that, you could have never predicted, and you've been very well experienced throughout all of this. The thing is, next in 2 years, we will see that coming, and there is a amazing possibility that we get this going. And honestly, who knows what it'll look like then, but we're going to be ready, and we're going to go all the way this time.
Yeah, you're probably like me, like you were an athlete too, so it's like I try not to make the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
Right? So if we try to run this play and it doesn't work out, it's like, let's figure out what went wrong and let's fix it. Like the easiest way to fix all of it is just start earlier, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, that if we start earlier, we don't have to worry about one of our signature people promising 1,500 and only turning in 100.
Yeah, was.
And it's.
There's also, and we're not going to slander, there is the element of within this whole system, because there are individuals who are well connected in the system, they might get the call that, hey, like, even though you have a contract to get this guy's signatures, just make them badge signatures just because, you're an operative, you're well connected, and there's the ability for people to impact your campaign from the outside that you don't even know about because it's so contingent on an established, as you said, cottage market, or that cottage industry that totally affects the entire, like if you're at the root of the tree, this messed up system impacts the entire tree all the way up to the branches.
Yeah, so to be totally fair, I did kind of see a lot of this coming. I was kind of warned about it, and so that's why, I don't know if you remember, but it's like we're going to put up a shell of a website and all the rest of our focus is getting these signatures.
Yeah.
And so it's like, in politics, it's like, you can try to run the normal play every time, and it's like, it's just not going to work for people. With you brought a huge microphone and a huge audience, and we were able to leverage those things. And even though it was a very compressed time frame and we didn't ultimately get on the ballot and that sort of stuff, we could immediately see that you were able to leverage a huge force that was not tied to the party. It's not contingent on, what promises you make in the back room and that sort of thing. And so that's what you got to do, is leverage what you got. And so, that's why I'm super supportive of this podcast and all this. I'm like excited because this is, you got to make it so that you're not reliant on the powers that be to get you where you want to go.
Yeah, no, and that's going to be huge. Zach, thank you so much for coming. This is going to be an awesome 3rd episode. Love to have you back on at any time. One more time, you go to Amazon. If you're looking to win an election, buy this book, Werrell's Rules of Politics, or the Difference Between Winning and Losing. It's on Amazon, and Staying Sane Along the Way. So check that out. There's also you won't brag about this one because it's a little self-serving, but I'm going to, because you need to read this story. It is amazing. It is one of the reasons why. And you mentioned that you feel like a band with a one-hit wonder, and you always got to try to get the next one because everyone always just talks about this race. But How to Bag a Rhino, R-I-N-O, The Whiz Kids Who Took Down Eric Cantor, which is another book. So look at both of those. They're on Amazon. Zach, amazing to have you. Amazing campaign to run both with you, with your advice, and let's run it back.
Hell yeah.
Run it back, and we got to stay in touch because you're an amazing resource, an amazing. I have become more efficient just meeting you and just hearing you every now and again. So, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll definitely get this going again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we got to talk to Elliot about that dog law stuff because
1-800-DOG, DOGGLAW. No, I'm kidding. That's not his phone number. Don't call that.
But you know what's crazy? I mean, we could just shoot the shit. I mean, Elliot, the joke is like Always Sunny, bird law. And Elliot's working in dog law.
He's going to be so pissed at me because he specifically said, don't tell people I do dog law.
don't tell people. Well, he also does dog. I mean, the dog
What do you
law.
expect? You tell me not to say that. Come on.
Elliot, if you want to come on, we can talk to you for more than just about dog law.
Yeah, but just don't bring your dog, please.
Does he have a big dog?
He had one.
And then, oh, shit. Okay.
I don't know if that's true, but I never saw it again.
we just use his first name, so.
There you go.
I mean, and the craziest part is this might be Kyle and Chris Long's doing as well. So if you make, like, Kyle and Chris Long sort of know the person who connected us, so it is wild that how this has all worked out. So Kyle and Chris would love you to come on the pod, but we'll see what's going on. Great to have you, Zach, and let's sort of finish up we have some paperwork to do, right, about the end of the campaign stuff, so we got to get.
We're going to have a campaign meeting to go to.
Yeah, we do, just to make sure that we dot our T's. We cross our T's, dot our I's.
Right.
So
keep Billy out of jail, baby.
Yeah, this is the most important part of trying to keep me out of jail. And thanks for traveling all the way from Houston.
You kept me. I got my Model T came yesterday, and I drove it for all of like 15 minutes because I was late for the airport.
Did you drive it to the airport?
No. No. It runs though. It runs. It's awesome. It's like it's amazing that people that were barely out of riding horses and carriages were able to figure out how to put that thing together. It's incredible.
And how is it like in different weather? Like, do you think it would be fine in the snow? What kind of tires does it use?
Compared to a horse, it's probably awesome. Compared to a modern car, I don't know. I mean, top speed like 37,
37 miles per hour?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, dude. Well, it's got these little bicycle wheels, so, the Houston streets.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. My shoulder is killing me from driving it, trying to.
Only for 15 minutes? Oh, because there's no power steering.
And you got to crank it.
That's wild. The best place to drive would probably be, like, not on a highway, but the highway might have the best roads to drive it on.
Have you ever driven in Houston?
No.
I'd be dead in 12 minutes, probably.
Where did you plan on driving this thing?
Not on the highways, but around, like, go to brunch, get a mimosa,
It's the perfect car.
It's a convertible.
That's wild. But does it use bike or car wheels?
Well, I mean, they're car wheels, but they're like, an inch thick.
Yeah, but where do you buy those? The rubber off, it's not the original tires.
No, they still make aftermarket parts. But, I mean, you can go find a Model T that's been in a field for 70 years, and it'll run.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Dude.
And so my friends are busting on me for having a Model T, and it's like, look, I've already got a 101-year head start on you. Guarantee you that Model T is going to be on the road longer than the car you're driving right now.
Wow. I mean, can't argue with that.
Plus, the government can't,
Can't hack it. Is that really why you're just like, I need the most unhackable car to make it out?
I'd be lying if I said it didn't factor in somewhat to my decision making.
Dude, imagine getting pulled over in a Model T. You probably are going to get pulled over because people are going to wonder if it's street legal.
Well, yeah. Well, the cool part is it only has to comply with the rules that were in place the year it was manufactured.
Oh my God. So were there rules?
It was like, don't have child slaves pulling it. Maybe. I don't even know.
What are let's look that up.
I know that I'm going to have a hard time as a lawyer, especially explaining to the guy doing my inspection that, no, trust me, doesn't need seatbelts, doesn't need actual brakes.
Okay, so wait, how does that involve like a DUI?
What?
Like, could you drive a Model T and because the rules and regulations?
No.
Okay.
No, that's a state license issue. That's completely irrespective of the safety standards. No, for those of you thinking about getting DUIs, you cannot just go buy a Model T and ride it like a scooter.
Drive it. You can just drive drunk. We figured out a loophole. You just drive drunk in a Model
Now,
T.
instead of thinking, oh, that's a badass Model T, it's like, man, I wonder how many DUIs that guy had.
That's crazy. Well, best of luck with everything. Let's hop offline. Great podcast. By the way, if you're liking this podcast, please like, subscribe. We're going to be putting a lot of stuff out. This one I think was good just to wrap up the campaign, and start the suspension of this campaign because I will be back. You have not seen the last of Bill Cotter for Congress. And when he's coming back with more knowledge and,
You'll have read my books beforehand this time.
Look, there's so much we could do in the time we had. We're trying to build a podcast right now. I knew we had enough repertoire we could get it going, but we'll figure it out. And if you definitely check Amazon for Zachary's books. Last thing, Werrell's Rules of Politics, or the difference between winning and losing and staying sane along the way. Check it out on Amazon. Zach Werrell, that's ZACHWERRELL.
EERRLW.
Sweet. Awesome. Check it out. Thanks you guys for listening. Love you guys. Thanks for all the support in my new endeavor. And let's grow this thing.
All right, Dan.
Peace.